Welcome to a special summer edition of The Balancing Act, Summer Escape with SingerLewak. In this exciting Summer Escape series, we're taking you on a journey through 3 fantastic regions, showcasing activities and destinations for summer adventures. Whether you live in the area, are planning a trip, or need a sign to visit these areas, consider this your roadmap. Our first stop is the stunning state of Colorado. Today, we're joined by Colorado partners Eric Lake, Gary Rand, and Sheila Balzer. Get ready to discover the hidden gems and must-visit spots that make Colorado the perfect summer escape.
Welcome back to another edition of The Balancing Act with SingerLewak. My name is Eric Lake, and I am a tax partner in the Denver office. Today I have Gary Rand and Sheila Balzer on the call today, and I will let Gary introduce himself, and then Sheila can introduce herself.
Good morning, Eric and Sheila. This is Gary, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Hi, Eric. This is Sheila Balzer. I lead the Assurance and Advisory Group here in Denver, and happy to be joining. Also representing as a Colorado native.
Yes, I am also a Colorado native and run the tax practice in the Denver office. So today we're going to talk about several items that relate to Colorado. I'd like to start out talking about outdoor adventure planning, maybe a little bit of items about cuisine, Colorado cuisine, some of the music venues and festivals that we may have, craft beers and beer tours. So let's start with outdoor adventures. Gary, I know that you go up into the mountains quite a bit, actually working remotely in the mountains. And can you just tell us a little bit about the area that you go up and stay at? And what are some of the fun things that we can do in that area?
Absolutely. We do spend a good amount of time in all seasons up in Carbondale, and Carbondale it's a great location. It's 30 minutes from Aspen and all of the great summer and winter activities there. It's also very close to the canyon. And there's the Colorado River, and there's lots of great kayaking and whitewater rafting through the river, both the Roaring Fork River and the Colorado River. So we do spend a lot of time hiking and skiing and on the river. So it is really a fabulous spot. On the way, there's some great restaurants. One is our favorite is a restaurant called Slope and Hatch in Glenwood Springs. So if anybody is passing through Glenwood, there's a right on the river in the city in the city center. There is a little hole in the wall taco place called Slope and Hatch, and it'll be the best tacos you ever have.
Well, Gary, aren't you forgetting something else you can do on the river, specifically the Roaring Fork and the Colorado Bayou?
Well, there's lots of fishing going on there. I'm not a fisherman, but I look out my window, and on any given day, probably about 3 or 4 fishing boats per hour come by. I don't know if that's what you were referring to or not.
It was, because, Gary, those are some gold medal fishing waters for trout fishing here in our great state. And one other thing, in between eating tacos, funny, you should mention Glenwood Springs, which is one of my favorite places in the entire state. It is the largest natural hot springs in the United States, and a great place to go summer or winter and enjoy relaxing in the natural hot springs, and in the winter enjoying the warm water while the snow is falling, and in the summer getting your tan or sunburn up here in our high altitude.
Yes, I spent much time in those springs, and you are exactly right. And with the boats that we see fishing down the Roaring Fork, that's the river that we've come to really enjoy kayaking down there. And most of the river is from Carbondale down to Glenwood Springs. It's about a 3.5 hour kayak float, and there's a combination of different levels of rapids. Most of it is pretty calm, but it could get up to there's certain areas where it could get up to a class 3. So it's mostly calm with some level of fun rapids activities.
And I'm sure on that on the Roaring Fork there are actually like float trip guides and outfitters that float up and down that river. So people coming from out of state and wanting to do a float trip, there's numerous outfitters all over Colorado, and specifically in the area that we've been talking about. So,
and I know everyone thinks of our state as a premier skiing state. Obviously, throughout the mountains, there's beautiful resorts, as Gary kind of alluded to. But right when you get in the mountains, if you're heading up to the mountains to go skiing, there's another kind of, I think, Colorado famous restaurant called Bojo's Pizza, home of the Rocky Mountain Pie, where the crust is probably better than the pizza that you eat with honey. But I know that's a popular spot and something kind of uniquely Colorado that attracts a lot of people wanting to get full on pizza.
One time, several years ago, on a Sunday afternoon after a day of skiing, we were stuck in the well-known traffic of I-70 and bailed out at Idaho Springs for some Bojo's.
Another good restaurant in Idaho Springs is Tommy Knockers. I really enjoyed that.
They have a lot of craft beer, don't they, Eric?
Yes. That's one of the places that actually produces beer at the restaurant. And Tommy Knocker beer is really good. I like that a lot.
What's your favorite go-to spot in town?
I'm sadly not a real big beer drinker, Gary, but I think any trip to Colorado would be remiss without a stop at Coors Brewing Company, which is synonymous with Colorado, located in Golden, Colorado, offering tours so you can see how the beer is made and also enjoy a couple beverages at the end of the tour. But that's something I feel like if you visit Colorado, you have to come see and go up and visit Gary, where the Rocky Mountain spring water starts, that trickles all the way down and makes it into the Coors beer that you hear about on commercials. And Eric, isn't there more beer by you?
Oh yeah. So I actually live in Fort Collins and commute to Denver, and there's several craft beer companies in Fort Collins. There's the Shilling 90, which is a great beer. Fat Tire is brewed up here. So there's great beer in Fort Collins if you're up here. And another one that I want to kind of give a shout out to is a brewery called Prost. And Prost is a brewery down on 20th Street, very close to downtown, has excellent beer. And my favorite there is, it's called Dunkel. And it's a darker beer, but it's very good.
Eric, didn't you forget, first of all, Prost beer, even though I don't drink the beer, they have cider and also amazing homemade pretzels. But isn't there, a bigger beer company up by you, Eric, with say Clydesdale horses?
Oh yes, we do have the Anheuser-Busch factory up here in Fort Collins also. And that's actually about 2 miles from my house. So that's a huge beer company up here too. So I actually forgot about that. So just drove by it.
There's another local craft brewer in town, a little north of Denver in Broomfield, that I think deserves a shout out. It's called Wonderland Brewing. And what kind of sets them apart and their location is most brewery tasting rooms are a little on the darker side and maybe not welcoming. Wonderland has a very sprawling campus with 3 outdoor patios. They have an 18-hole miniature golf course and a room with 30 or so pinball machines and ping pong tables, and that's in addition to their fabulous beer and burgers. So if you're looking for a good spot to spend a sunny Sunday afternoon, I recommend Wonderland.
Everybody's going to think all we do is drink beer in Colorado, guys.
Well, we're going to move on to other topics here. I want to talk about some of the music festivals and music events that are going on in Colorado. I'd like to start off with, what are your favorite music venues in the state?
I don't think anyone would argue with us if we pointed out that we have one of the most unique music venues anywhere, and that is Red Rocks Amphitheater, which is a naturally formed rock formation that the amphitheater was built into, and has some of the most amazing views and acoustics for anyone to enjoy any type of concert. People visit the theater just to go and look at it, whether there's a concert or not. But it's definitely a unique landmark here in our state. So that would be my vote.
And very close to Denver. It's like 20 minutes out of Denver. So if you're in the Denver area, Red Rocks would be a great place to go see a concert, etc. And I was looking at the people that are coming to play at Red Rocks, and a ton of people are playing, and concerts are like almost every day, literally. Any others, Gary, that you would want to do a shout out for?
Yeah. I mean, so I've had some very memorable evenings at Red Rocks. A music venue that I've come to really love is it's a much smaller venue, and during the summer there's a natural amphitheater at the Denver Botanic Gardens. And it's a significantly smaller venue. Seats maybe a couple of thousand, and but it's attracted some very well-known artists. And over the years I've seen the Neville Brothers there, and Sean Colvin there, and Natalie Merchant, and John Hyatt, and Taj Mahal, and Kev Moe, and the Violent Femmes. And so it's a significantly different experience than the much larger venues, and even the Red Rocks. You get a much different experience being up close and personal with the artists. So that's my recent favorite venue.
And then we can't probably forget the Fiddler's Green Amphitheater. That's out south in Denver, actually in the city of Denver. And so that's a great place to go to for music venues. Of course, there's music venues up in Aspen Music Festival, the Vail Music Festival. Winter Park has a music festival, and there's a ton of music festivals all over the Rocky Mountains and in the Rocky Mountains, and that would be a great place to go. So I would encourage everybody to look at music around the state.
Well, and I would mention, unlike Gary, who reeled off quite a list of musicians he's seen, this girl likes her country music, and there's a huge country music festival put on by Dierks Bentley in Buena Vista, Colorado. And, in Colorado, while Denver's a big city, we like to at least still pretend we're Western, and we have a very important event that I'm going to let Eric talk about every year in January.
Yeah. Thank you, Sheila, on that. We've had the National Western Stock Show in Denver for over 100 years. It usually starts like the first or second week of January and goes for like 2.5 weeks. It's one of the largest stock shows in the country. We have rodeo. We have the Pro Bull Riders Association coming in, and there's rodeos almost every day and night. Really fun. If you're here in the winter, that would be a great thing to come and see. Lots of livestock, lots of fun places to walk around and see a lot of interesting things in the agricultural world, which, Colorado has a big ag industry. And then there's the Greeley Stampede in the summer, which is awesome. And if you want to get out of Colorado a little ways, Cheyenne has Cheyenne Frontier Days, which is also a kind of like the stock show, but not as big. So we talked a little bit about craft beer, so I probably won't go into that unless there's some other things that you want to talk about. I think one thing about the breweries around Colorado, and I'm not sure if this is a nationwide thing, but a lot of the breweries have tasting gardens, and a lot of them don't actually serve food from a kitchen there, but they do have food trucks. So it's always fun to go to like the Prost Brewery and sit there and get some good pretzels or whatever from the food truck.
I know you mentioned good food, so this is probably not the best segue, but there's something else in Colorado that I think people always think of. So one, for anyone who is a fan of South Park, you'll know that the South Park creators are from Colorado. And growing up here as natives, we always had birthday parties or things at a restaurant called Casa Bonita. And it has just reopened here in Denver. You have to join a waiting list and get an email to even go visit the newly renovated Casa Bonita once it was purchased by the South Park creators. I've had the chance to go, and the reason Casa Bonita, everybody talks about it, is the indoors. The restaurant has the feel of an underwater cave, and they actually have indoor cliff diving at Casa Bonita as well as other kids' activities. But they are notoriously known for not the greatest food, but entertainment is kind of the thing. And I will say, even under the new renovations, I would say it should not be known to food, but definitely entertaining if you have any little ones.
That's good to know, to set expectations.
Set the expectations on the food low, possibly eat before you go. But if you have little kids or you want to eat where you feel like you're in an underground cave with outlaws and cliff divers, I guess, I'm not quite sure how else to explain it, then that's where you need to go.
So let's talk a little bit about Colorado cuisine. Let's discuss, maybe some of the deserving culinary scenes in Colorado. And also, what are some of the unique Colorado dishes or ingredients that you love?
So I'll go ahead and go there. I think this is a fun trick to play on people, but we have something called Rocky Mountain oysters here in Colorado, and that's all I'm going to say about that. But I think if you come, you should probably try it once.
And they're a specialty at the Buckhorn restaurant, which has actually liquor license number 1 in the state. It's a historic landmark here, and that is Rocky Mountain oysters are a specialty along with their great steaks.
There's another. It's actually a bar in a little town called Severance in northern Colorado close between Greeley and Fort Collins, and it's called Bruce's Bar, and they specialize in Rocky Mountain oysters. As a matter of fact, they specialize so much in it that the side of the buildings, there's a lot of goose hunting going on up in northern Colorado, close to Severance. And so the sign on the side of the building says, Bruce's Bar, where the geese fly and the bulls cry.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that for any listeners to figure out what Rocky Mountain oysters are. But it's a fun trick to play on people who may not know. Just think about it this way. Colorado is not located near any major bodies of water. So don't be thinking you're getting oysters like you might get if you ordered them somewhere else. And the Buckhorn Exchange is probably the best place and kind of a fun place that features a menu, not only the steaks being amazing, but also some other kind of wild game items that you're not going to go to every restaurant and find, such as elk, buffalo, rattlesnake, some of those, common things.
My favorite dinner there is the yak. They have very good yak.
They have yak. Good. I didn't know that. And another restaurant that serves kind of that same cuisine is a restaurant called The Fort, and it's out off of 287.
Very close to
coming
Red
out
Rocks.
of Denver. Very close to Red Rocks. Yeah. So you could go to The Fort for dinner and then go see a concert at Red Rocks, and they're within a couple miles of each other actually. So really good food there, and it's fun because it actually looks like an old fort that you would have seen back in the 1800s when this area was being settled.
Little trivia too, the fort hosted the G7 world leaders when they met here in Denver. So international acclaim for the fort.
Any other Colorado cuisine that you would want to point out?
I don't know if it's a Colorado cuisine, but one activity of ours, in late spring all the way, through the fall is Saturday and Sunday mornings at the local farmers markets. And what is at the farmers markets here, there's not so much lots of farmers selling their fruits and vegetables, but it's a lot of crafts and food vendors, and so it's one of our favorite pastimes on weekend mornings is to spend an hour or so either walking or biking to a local market and getting some breakfast and hanging out and listening. There's many times some live music and just spending time buying some tomatoes and eating some breakfast.
And also, Gary, if you kind of come towards harvest time in the fall, is actually some produce that Colorado is quite famous for. So the first one is you have Rocky Ford cantaloupe, which is southern Colorado, known as one of the best cantaloupe in the United States, and also watermelon. And then you also get peaches. Colorado's climate, especially up towards Gary and Carmondale in Palisade, is one of the great places for growing peaches because of the differential in temperature between day and night in the mountains. So we have our famous Palisade peaches come harvest that are beyond amazing. Also with sweet corn from a town called Olathe in the mountains and kind of west of Colorado. So we do have some agricultural items that you can get at farmers markets that we're all particularly proud of as being locally grown here in Colorado.
Yes, I will say that I do go through about a dozen or so peaches when they are per week when they are in season.
And even after that, we could probably argue or start a war if we had a New Mexico office. But also green chili is quite popular here in Colorado. So at those same farmers markets, you'll see a lot of roasted green chili being sold for people to use in making their own recipes.
Yeah.
There you go. We should have a contest with our Georgia office about
Peaches. I want to move on to road trips and planning your road trips and pit stops. And, if you had to plan what you would think is the ultimate Colorado road trip itinerary, Gary, where would you go? And then we'll see what Sheila thinks.
Absolutely. So we haven't done it in many years, but one of our favorite trips was down to the Black Canyon of the Gunnison, and then from there to Montrose. Just that area is just gorgeous, and there's this huge canyon, and then there's a drive from Ouray to Silverton, and I think that stretch, it's called the $1 Million Highway, and it's just gorgeous down there.
That's hard to beat, Gary. We know I have an affinity for the hot springs. We talked about Glenwood Springs, and Ouray also has hot springs as well as mine tours that kind of talk about Colorado's mining history. For any buffs that like history, I think that's kind of a fun thing to do and see as well if you're going that path. But I also think sometimes people forget, but a couple other really cool places in Colorado. We have the Great Sand Dunes National Park, which is a unique national park. And also down there, you have some of the Indian ruins and things that are there for the exploration. And also kind of north of Denver, we have Rocky Mountain National Park, which attracts visitors from all over the U.S., especially during the elk mating season. So there's a ton of Colorado wildlife that call Rocky Mountain National Park home. But big elk, bighorn sheep, all of those things. And the elk, there's probably as many elk as there is in the nearby town. So it's a great place for wildlife viewing, potentially even some moose, but a beautiful, beautiful place in our state, in my opinion. And not even that far of a road trip from the city.
Just expanding on that a little bit, Sheila, when you go into Rocky Mountain National Park, there's a road called Trail Ridge Road, and it goes from the eastern side of the divide to the western side. And on the eastern side of the divide is a town called Estes Park. And they have a really fun hotel there, the Stanley Hotel, which was featured in The Shining.
Yep, for any Stephen King fans or people who like those supernatural shows, it's supposedly haunted.
Yep.
I've stayed there multiple times and never come up with any haunting stories, but it has a long history of unexplained items, but a very cool place to stay, unique item. And if you're a Stephen King fan, a must see.
And then when you go up over Trail Ridge, going basically north or southwest, you'll drop onto the western slope of the Continental Divide. And on that side is a town called Grand Lake. And it's actually a natural lake. A lot of the water around Colorado is reservoirs, but Grand Lake is a natural lake. They don't actually know where the bottom of the lake is because it's like a canyon, and it winds around underneath the water. Grand Lake is a great little town to go into and visit. You can boat there, you can hike and fish, and it's just a great place to go and have a good time. The town is kind of quaint and fun. There's a restaurant there called the Lariat, and the locals call it the Rope. Great fun bar to go to, and some really nice hotels, kind of motels there. So my favorite is one called the Spirit Lake Lodge in Grand Lake.
Sounds like someone's going to need several weeks to visit us and all our ideas here in Colorado.
Exactly. Outdoor fitness is a big one. Maybe we can touch on that. I really want to touch on local arts and culture in the area. And then, some wildlife spotting and natural photography, if that's of interest to you all, and maybe a little bit about camping. Sheila, why don't you start with the local art and culture?
Okay. I assume you picked me because I'm the most cultured on the call, right, Eric?
Of course.
Right. So yeah, put me on the spot. So a couple of favorites of mine are, we do have an amazing art museum in Denver, the Denver Art Museum, that hosts different exhibits. I've seen a the making of Star Wars exhibit to your Impressionists and all of those kinds of things. That's probably the biggest museum, but there's lots of arts festivals. One that's pretty well known is the Cherry Creek Arts Festivals, and that's different artists showing their work, as well as, sidewalk chalk art, all kinds of things, but a fun day to prowl and look at items there. So that's what I would mention. Probably not in the culture and arts thing, but another thing that I like to do, or we'll call it Sheila's culture and art, is, following all the local sports teams around here as well.
That's cultural.
Sort of.
I think
Or
cultural.
could be anti-cultural too. It depends on the day.
Yeah. I'd like to mention the Colorado Ski Museum that's downtown. There's a lot of history. Colorado is one of the places that skiing was started in the United States, and a lot of history of that. And that's a great museum to go to. We have a symphony that plays in Colorado. And actually, I was looking at the Red Rocks venue and who's playing up there, and the Colorado Symphony's playing at Red Rocks this summer, and I think that would be a great place to listen to the symphony. Gary, what great art galleries or museums or cultural events that are happening this summer that you know of?
So first, Sheila, I'm going to connect some dots with sports and museums, with a shout out to the Ballpark Museum, which is downtown across the street from Coors Field. And this is a museum put together by a dear friend, Bruce Hellerstein. And he is a baseball fanatic and collector, and if there's anyone who is a fan of baseball and baseball memorabilia, I suggest you look up the Ballpark Museum and go visit it, because it's just you walk in there and it's just a fabulous spot. In regards to art, again, just kind of like the farmers markets, we really enjoy the First Fridays that are in some of the art districts here in Denver. One of the more popular ones is along Santa Fe on the First Fridays. However, one of our favorites is along Tennyson Street on First Fridays, and there's just lots of art galleries that are open, and food trucks, and lots of art vendors, and it's just a good time.
I've got to talk about maybe a museum / cultural place to go to, and this gets back to the stock show and our agricultural background in Colorado. And down in Colorado Springs, there's the Professional Rodeo Hall of Fame right in Colorado Springs. And for anybody that likes rodeo and that type of thing, that might be something that you'd like to go visit. So.
Also down in the Springs, we should probably also note there's a huge Olympic training center down there.
That's right.
Where a lot of the Olympians train, and also the Air Force, the U.S.'s Air Force Academy is located there as well.
Yep, that's great. And we've got the Will Rogers Shrine down there, which is kind of cool to see. And NORAD has a big military center down there that's actually packed into a mountain. So
Yeah,
I'm not sure
you're not getting a tour of that though.
No, no, we're not getting a tour of that. But it is down there, and it's kind of interesting to know that. So, do you all like to go camping? Do you like to go glamping? And if so, what spots in Colorado would you recommend?
I'm going to defer to you two because my idea of camping probably involves a hotel, if we're honest.
We go camping maybe once every 4 years or so, and it's typically somewhere outside of the Denver metro area. The last time we went camping, I forget the campground. It was up not too far from Carbondale, and it was a 48 hours of nonstop downpour. And we've learned from that experience how to start a fire in the rain, and that tents at some point become the water just seeps through. So that was our learning from that experience.
Just to put, there are a ton of areas to go camping in the Rocky Mountains. They're everywhere. One of my favorite spots is between Steamboat Springs and Vail. It's called the Flat Top Mountains. And when I was young, my family and I used to go and actually pack up into the mountains. We would carry, when I was little, I carried about a 30-pound pack. When I was older and in my teens, I carried about a 60 or 70-pound pack. And we would just drop our car and start walking. And sometimes we'd walk like 3 or 4 miles in. There's gorgeous scenery in there. In the Flat Top area, there's a place called the Blue Slide. And basically what the Blue Slide is it's a whole side of a mountain, and it's oil shale, and it's just gorgeous. And there's a huge river right there, and I'm not sure what the name of it is, but had a really good time camping up there. And I prefer to go backpacking rather than camping, where you drive a car up and set a tent in. I like to kind of walk back a ways and bring stuff to catch fish and cook fresh trout, etc. Really kind of a fun thing to do in the state. Do you guys have any advice for seasonal businesses or small businesses in Colorado?
Most of the ski towns have down times. They call it shoulder season or mud season, where it's between the summer activities and the winter activities. And there are a lot of small businesses in these towns that really have a hard time during those months, because there's not a lot of tourists, and many just shut down during those times. What I think is really important is businesses that are in areas with seasonality like that. They look at their cash flows, and maybe the best course of action is to close, or just make sure that you've got enough resources during those slow times to make your way through. But it is a real phenomenon to go through these towns during the off seasons, and the restaurants are closed and the shops are closed just because there's no business. So that's really what I've seen.
Which brings up the point, Gary. Approximately when is shoulder season or mud season? And I think there's 2 of them.
Yeah, well, it's really when the snow melts. So in busy times, or in big ski seasons, it could extend into the ski season could extend into May, and then it's typically right after that. So late April, May. Would be a shoulder season before the summer activities really start, and then it's this thing in the fall right before ski season where it's getting a little chilly, and the summer activities are trailing off, but before ski season. So.
Yep. Sheila, do you have any advice for seasonal or small businesses in Colorado that?
Yeah, I think, outside of the ski and mountain towns, you'll get a little less seasonality. So I would say my advice would be directed at understanding the consumer here in Colorado. People here love the outdoors, love all of the activities that you can do in Colorado, love the craft beer here, as I think we demonstrated, love their pets and things you can do with your pets and dogs and stuff like that. So just keeping in mind, those things about the typical consumer here in Colorado. I think Colorado boasts some pretty robust different kind of niche industries. And so one thing that's actually fairly big in Colorado is aerospace. So, you have some unique things with that. There's some large military bases in Colorado. So understanding them as a consumer here, I think, is important. And it's a well-educated workforce generally in Colorado. So those are just things, if a business was looking at being here, that I think are kind of in general important without trying to talk about specific tax items or incentives or things like that. I think kind of knowing your customer, those are things that I feel like are quintessential Colorado.
Again, this is Eric Lake, and I run the tax group in the Denver office of SingerLewak. I want to thank you all for listening to this podcast. And I want to thank you, Gary and Sheila, for taking the time to kind of reminisce and think about what are the great things in the state of Colorado.
And I've got some new activities to keep me busy this summer.
Yeah, it's funny how you learn things about your own state, but I'd probably end by saying, hopefully you could tell, we're all proud of our state and proud of the things that go on here, and we'd love to have you visit.
I'm going out for a beer now.
Get to work, Gary.
Yeah, get to work, Gary. It's only
4:35, Gary.
And that's a wrap for our Colorado adventure on this special summer escape edition of the Balancing Act podcast with SingerLewak. A huge thank you to Eric Lake, Gary Rand, and Sheila Balzer for sharing their insider tips and experiences. We hope you're as excited as we are to explore Colorado this summer. Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll uncover things to do in Northern California. Until then, happy summer, safe travels, and keep balancing those adventures.